the informational webinar. This office hour will be recorded, and then the video will be posted to our solicitation website. So I guess you can ask your questions by raising your hand or drop a questions in the chat, and then we will do our best to answer your questions. So I saw Scott.
Might be a better question verbally.
You kind of broke up on my end. I'm not sure if that was the same for you, but if you could repeat maybe what you said.
Oh, sorry about that. I was saying it might be a better question done verbally versus in chat, since it seems to be a two-parter and pretty specific.
Sure. Should I go ahead?
Yeah. Yes, please.
So these are two very different types of questions. So first of all, let me preface this. I've actually done a number of projects with OPC and through the Resources Legacy Fund. I actually am under contract now with them, working on the Squid Fishery Advisory Committee, and have actually done work with RLF dating back probably 20 years. So one question about funding, it very much struck me, your statement that all of the subs need to be paid and that the OPC pays in arrears. 450K is a big lift for a small firm. I was wondering if there had been any consideration given to working through an entity like RLF or bridge funding or other financial arrangements. So that's one type of question. My other one is really different. Maybe I should pause and let you answer this one first.
Yes, please. As far as the budget, 450, is a huge lift, but we pay, and as you should be paying in arrears for services, so you wouldn't be giving a $450,000
Sure.
payment at one time, or you might, I don't know, at one time, and then being out of cost for that. So it would just be small increments of, I paid, and it's still a lot of money, like $50,000 to the subs, and then asking for reimbursement on that. There is an option, I believe, EWA, please correct me if your solicitation is different, where we can advance funding. It's only for those entities with a proven financial hardship with having to be paid in arrears. And those advanced funding, the advanced funding option does not count towards your own personnel cost. And we wouldn't be able to give you any more money until you spent all of that.
Sure.
So example, say you have a $500,000 project, we can advance up to $125,000 at one time, but we couldn't give you anything else until you gave us proof that you spent every penny of that $125,000. But also in the meantime, it's a weird balance. We couldn't pay you for your staff time until you also paid out that $125,000. Right. So in that time, if you have $15,000 in staff payments or personnel costs, we would have to wait until that advance payment was paid out first, prior to A, advancing more, and B, paying for your other costs.
That makes sense. I think in general, for larger firms that have a lot of people on staff, that makes perfect sense. For a very small firm, it's very challenging, and it's still a big lift. And that actually connects to my second question. So I don't know how familiar you are with Concur's work, but a lot of the work that we do is in the collaboration and joint fact-finding realm. And in particular, we have a specialization in mobilizing independent review panels for complex issues such as the ones that you're addressing. And in fact, we are under contract right now with your sister agency, the State Water Resources Control Board, to convene a panel that is giving advice on the search for suitable subsurface sites and a method to find them for subsurface intakes for desalination. So that process model involves us contracting with a series of independent panelists who are not employees of my firm, but rather they are subcontractors. That process model is not on the face of it what the RFP is asking for, but it might hold considerable promise given the complexity and contentiousness of the issue. So my second question is, would OPC be open to that sort of a process model in terms of the mobilization of expertise?
From a budget standpoint, and I'll let Iwei touch upon the rest, if the people doing the work are technically sub-recipients or subcontractors, then the advance payments option would work great for you guys, as long as our executive director approved the advance payment option.
Okay.
Kind of touching back on, like, we understand that, it's really hard to do all of this with the advance payments and not getting that money up front for other costs. But for this solicitation, this is using bond funds. So our hands are tied by bond law. So we will do as much as we can legally to bend the rules within reason or without breaking the rules.
Sure.
Just so you know, like, OPC definitely wants to work with everyone, especially these smaller entities. But we are tied in this case to bond law, which is why we have those strict restrictions.
Sure.
And then Iwei can answer towards the rest of it as far as what this RFP is looking for.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think in terms of the format of the advisory committee, we are pretty open to different models, as you mentioned. So I think the idea is that as long as you can use the advice and direction from the advisory committee, that can help you guide the development of the monitoring guidance, and we
Sure.
are open to different models and ideas.
Great. No, that's helpful. I mean, this project is actually entirely parallel to the work we're doing with the state board, for which we have 7 independent panelists. None of them are affiliated with the same organization, and in fact, some of them are from out of state. So we've covered 7 disciplines by doing a really wide search. That's a different process model than a large firm, mobilizing an EIS writing team. So I wanted to, I know you're not recruiting for the model that I described, but I wanted to make sure it was at least plausible and not precluded by what you intend.
Yeah, that's what you said. I think it's possible, and we really want to hear like different ideas so that's why in your proposal you can outline how you are going to assemble your committee, like advisory committee.
Great. Thanks very much.
We get another hand. I think it's Silva.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Sylvia Yanes. I'm actually representing a developer, but I'm interested in having a little bit more information about this solicitation. My first question is about the advisory committee. Actually, it's how this will be selected, and if there's an opportunity for industry to be part of the advisory committee. That'll be the first question, then I can follow up with another one.
Yeah, as I mentioned to the previous question, so we are pretty open to how the advisory committee would be assembly and who will be part of the committee. So I think it's fine for experts from the industry to get involved and share their advice in the committee. So we don't exclude the participation from the industry in the advisory committee. Holly, is there anything that you want to add from the budget side or?
Nothing from the budget side or advice I have for this one.
Great. And I think another question we had was more towards the, there has been a discussion in various venues about creating a regional science entity that would help coordinate, align, pool funding, and execute regional monitoring efforts for offshore wind in California. So how would this effort in the RFP, this solicitation would align with that future science entity if that is set up? Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, there are talks about like regional science entity. And as you saw from the RFP, we did have a bullet point as one of the objectives, that is to facilitate coordinations with key players within the offshore wind sector. So a regional entity could be a possibility to fulfill that objective in the offshore RFP. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, we're just trying to understand how the efforts in the RFP would align with this entity, but my understanding based is on what just shared is that it is expected to be coordination between this effort that's going to be funded and then the entity once it's created, if it is created in the near future.
Yeah, so like I said, it could be a possibility, and since the coordination is also one piece to make sure the information's in the information in the guidance can be very useful for different stakeholders.
Okay, yeah, that answers my question, and I'll let others, and maybe I can share a little bit more later. I have a couple more questions, but I will let others to ask.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess next one is Brooklyn.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
Hi.
I'm Brooklyn Fox. I have a few pretty straightforward questions, actually. So if I can, I'll just ask them in order. So the first one was regarding under Section A of the grant eligibility. It notes that international applicants and partners are not allowed at this time. But does that mean can international members within our team participate? So if we have a company that we're located in many different countries, can our team members who are maybe in the UK or in Australia work on this project with us?
So the issue on international partners with this funding source, since it is bond funded, is these dollars need to stay within, the United States, but specifically should stay within California, because these are taxpayer dollars and those shouldn't be leaving the state, let alone the country. And that's why it's not allowed at this time, at least not for this funding source.
Okay, so that would mean the only people that work on this have to be based in California physically?
So the money just can't, so they can be, if they're working pro bono, like, yeah, we want you to work with them. Or if they're working for a company that's based in California, but they're somewhere else, you need that money to just go to that California entity. It's up to them what they do from there. We just need state dollars to stay within the state.
Okay. So it's just about like allocating where that money is going then in terms of the company, within the company.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And then for the grantees, is there only one project team that will be selected for this?
Yes, so this grant would be, will go to just one selected grantee, but the grantee will outline the plan and then how to assemble advisory committee and then facilitation. So the grantee could just get help from subcontractors or other.
Right.
Yeah, but just go to one grantee.
That makes sense. Yeah, and then the last one, again, pretty straightforward, is a question on the format guidelines. So I know you put together a template to use. I know in the past with submitting some work, we were able to manipulate, like in terms of how it's submitted, like the pages being landscape rather than portrait. Are there restrictions on the format in terms of that?
Could you rephrase your question?
So like are there format guidelines? So I know there are restrictions to the page lengths, but for example, could any of the pages be landscape if we're showing a project schedule and it might be more accessible to submit it in landscape mode? Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that would be fine. I think we just ask that you don't change like the font size. We don't want you to like suddenly have 8-point size font to like try to, get as much on a page as possible, but changing so that it makes the most sense for like a table to be more readable. That's acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for answering the questions.
Thank you. So next, I will go to Chris.
Yeah, hi, Chris Ryberg. I don't have so much of a question as just input into the process as it relates to maybe other environmental agencies or organizations that would be of interest in our capabilities. So TerraDepth is just an autonomous underwater vehicle company. We provide geophysical survey, and we've proven this value out in multiple different environments. So including offshore wind on the other parts of the world. So just want to offer that up if there's interest, if there's people that are looking to build a complete response and proposal to this RFP, we have that capability to provide that. So wanted to let you know.
Thanks for sharing that. So is there, Sylvia, go ahead.
I just have a couple more questions, and those both relate to the monitoring topic. So would you clarify what that monitoring in your RFP refers to? Long-term, pre, during, and post-construction surveys that might use before, after control impact, for example. We're just trying to clarify that the monitoring concept used in the RFP relates to that long-term, those long-term surveys.
Yeah, that's a good question. So to clarify, this 2-year project is mainly to develop the guidance, monitoring guidance, and that guidance monitoring could be, so we are looking for long-term monitoring that includes the baseline monitoring before construction and ongoing monitoring during operation. So the goal of this project is we are hoping that this guidance can serve as a compass that can help us, okay, what informations are important during different development phases, because we all know there are so many unknowns about the environmental impact of offshore wind. So we want to know what questions are important and should be prioritized, and how to answer those questions through proper monitoring designs. So it would be great if the guidance can also share the details related to the monitoring for specific questions, if whenever possible. So yeah, this is just like a comprehensive monitoring guidance that includes long-term, that's focused on long-term monitoring for sure.
Okay, good. And yeah, that clarifies some of the concerns, because that there will be sort of short-term surveys that are on a more like compressed schedule. And we were just trying to get a sense of the temporary aspect of the monitoring in this solicitation. In terms of specifically about the questions that you just mentioned, how these kind of topics and focused areas would be aligned with the permit conditions? With these questions or topics have alignment with what developers will have as conditions in their permits down the line? Is that your kind of vision on how the monitoring guidance will work?
Yeah, that could be, I think in our RFP, there's another bullet point under the objectives, that is to identify and evaluate the data needed for permitting and policies requirement. So that could be that is one of objectives from the monitoring guidance.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I appreciate your answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other question? And just for your note, we will remain online until 4. So if you already got your question answers, you don't have to stay.
You wait just for the recording. I think I might pause it until we have new questions, so we don't have this empty airspace. So before we get any other questions, remind me to start it again. I guess I forget.
Great plan.
That's great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more just regarding, sorry about that. Just regarding clarification one more time on like the bond money and distributing among the team. I know you had answered it already, but just to clarify that, so as if the money were to stay within like the California entity, we still could leverage our team in the UK, or only could leverage our team elsewhere within the United States?
As long as our payments, and I can double check with our legal as well, but our paper trail as far as what we receive. So our payment to you, your invoice from your subcontractor, it should all be within the United States, but preferably within California.
Okay.
Any payments outside of the United States, California, if we don't see it, we don't know what happens, but we want to see those direct funds staying within those areas.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just so I know when we're developing our team. Thank you for that.
Any
I
other
don't want to
questions?
jinx it, Ben, but you might be safe now.
Were you going to add anything before I pause the recording?
No, I just want to ask if there are any more questions that we can help answer.
Hi, I just have a quick follow-up question on the monitoring topics. I remember you mentioned last week that there are a few topics that are suggest or mentioned in the RFP in terms of focus areas. How the 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 topics will be selected? I think in the previous question I asked that, but I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I think in the RFP, we listed 5 category groups.
Mhm.
That's what we hope to see, but definitely it's not limited to that. So those 5 category groups are important, at least from the state perspective. So I think that's oceanography processes, marine mammals and sea turtles, birds and bats, and marine ecology, and the fisheries. So these are the 5 category groups that we are hoping at least to see in the guidance, in the monitoring guidance.
Okay, and I think that the last question I had in my list here was about the review panel. Would the review panel will be kind of composed of OPC staff only, or do you envision having other agencies participating?
So we are thinking of having a review panel consisting of OPC and other our key state partner agencies. So that would include CDFW, State Land, Coastal Commission, and CEC.
All right, great. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Since it's 4 and we don't have any more questions, I would just conclude this office hour. And if the applicants wants to ask any questions, feel free to email, send your questions to OPC's offshore wind email. Thank you. Thank you, Ben and Holly.